Hi, everybody, and welcome to our latest episode of Lowdown on Low Code. This is going to be a really good one and one that we've waited for a long time. And I want to maybe give just a little bit of background on this particular guest and the product that he represents. So, John, I want to roll the clock back to 2018. We're working for a research firm, and they tell us as part of our predictions document that there's a product coming from a company that's going to dominate the market in low code. And it was from a Seattle-based company. Note I said not a Redmond-based company. And we pushed back pretty hard on that. Do you remember the story? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Keep going.
We 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 were told to write about this amazing new low code product that was coming out of a Seattle-based company, and we said, no, this makes no sense. Like, they have an amazing brand name, but we really see very clearly that Power Platform is really poised to do something amazing. Like, it's really put all the pieces together, and Flow was kind of becoming Power Automate at that time. And we pushed back and said, we're gonna write about Power Platform. We're not gonna write about that other product. Do you remember that one, John?
I do.
That was a very well received piece of research, and once in a blue moon we get it right, and we did that time. So anyway, I'm here with John Rymer. How are you, John?
Very well, Rob. Thanks for that little bit of history. My brain is not quite dead yet, but I did recall it after you got into it.
We get it right so infrequently that we have to go back to 2018 and celebrate our wins. So anyway, to that note, we are here today with a guest that we've been waiting for a very long time. So the platform in question here is Power Platform from Microsoft, and we are really honored today to have Richard Riley, General Manager of Low Code Marketing for Low Code at Microsoft. How are you, Richard? And thanks for being here.
Thank you for the invite. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get me on the podcast. I'm doing great.
We're well worth the wait. So we have a peculiar way that we start these things, Richard, which is we like to get people's backstories. How did you get to where you are? How did you find your way into the technology industry? How did you find your way to Microsoft? How did you find your way to this low code opportunity? So these stories can just be fascinating. No pressure, but how'd you end up here, Richard?
I can tell you the Riley journey. That's fine. So I started doing technical support at a company called Blue Arrow in the UK. They're a recruiting firm. And I ended up getting pulled into some SQL and Exchange, and SharePoint was just becoming a thing at that point. Worked there. That led me to go set myself up as an independent consultant 2 or 3 years later, doing SharePoint, like basically collaboration consulting for a part of the UK government, which was a ton of fun. The guy that hired me there moved to Microsoft. He got recruited by our account manager, and then about 6 months later, he recruited me into Microsoft, where I joined MCS doing consultancy stuff, sticking CDs and servers, doing a little bit of coding, all around SharePoint and Exchange. And then that was 99. And then in 2005, I got the opportunity to move to the US, joined the SharePoint product marketing team, spent a ton of fun time in the SharePoint product marketing. At the time, it was the fastest product to $1 billion. And I know you two were deeply involved in a ton of conversations we had when we were doing all sorts of things there, which was with customers and the industry, which was great. Stayed within the modern work kind of area office as we did the transition from on-prem to cloud, saw a bunch of that stuff happen, was involved in all of that, which was great. And then I would say maybe 2018, 2019, got the opportunity to join a new team, which was focused on all this low-code stuff, which honestly I knew very little about, but looked super interesting. And there were a ton of parallels with what we were doing in SharePoint at the time. Yes. Power Apps was just a twinkle in someone's eye at the time. And that's where I met you two on the low-code side, at least, and spent the last kind of 6-7 years in this low-code space and watched it go from a tiny little thing to this mainstream kind of mainstream platform in honestly rocket time. It's been crazy. It's been a really, really interesting journey.
It's really provided a lot of value in the market. The twinkle, the fellow with the twinkle in his eye, I suppose, is Charles Lamanna. Um, and um, uh, and you mentioned MCS, Microsoft Consulting Services. We're going to talk about MCS a little bit today, quite a bit today, but it's going to be Microsoft Copilot Studio. So you guys are your acronym challenged as always, John.
Richard, so it's fun. It's fun thinking back as you're describing the history. Fun thinking back to those conversations. Um, as you said, from twinkle in Charles Lamanna's eye to something that is ever present, it's everywhere, and as things tend to happen, the platforms become more and more scalable, more and more functional. Um, how far do you find how far do you find people taking Power Platform, particularly Power Apps and Power Automate, in terms of scale and in terms of complexity? Would a major insurance company, for example, do you find them looking at Power Platform as an option to modernize their entire claims processing process? Is that happening yet? Kind of give us a sense of where you're at.
Yeah, we've seen companies do amazing things with the platform, and I think it's a testament to customers' innovation and creativity of what they can do, and the fact that we have over the past 6-7 years really built up a solid foundation in terms of the way that the product's architected, the governance model around it, the capabilities, the integration with Azure. One of our design principles when we started off on this journey was to make sure that the product was accessible to a broad set of people. Like if you could use formulas in Excel, if you knew what pivot table was, if you'd ever built a macro, you could pick up a Power product and kind of understand it and figure your way around it fairly easily. That carried through to we also want to make sure that there's no cliffs in the product, and we've talked about this for years, where there's only so much you can do in low code, but we want to make sure that if you need to break glass and get into pro code, it was very easy to do. So we've spent a ton of time and energy with our friends over in Azure to make sure that it made it very easy for you to start pulling in Azure services and really extending the product in amazing ways. And honestly, that's giving customers a really broad platform and a choice. They can use low code with pro code. They can just use pro code. Pro developers can use low code. It's really created this really interesting kind of flywheel and virtuous cycle of low code being everywhere, which is kind of what we wanted. And that's given customers a platform to be able to really, really amazing things, from replacing really complex workflows like claims processing, all the way through to people like the Red Cross using it to build disaster recovery and emergency situation apps in record time to go, save people's lives. Honestly, one of the things that keeps me so interested in this space is it's not just about the technology; it's about what people apply the technology to.
Right.
And the way that the technology affects them as humans and their career trajectory. I mean, we've seen amazing stories of people that have started off with low code. Got nothing to do with IT. They've been in the business, and then they end up in IT, completely changing the career trajectory and the focus of what they do, because they picked up a product and they were just natural aptitude for it, and they did really cool stuff with it. So it's an awesome space to be in. I absolutely love this stuff. It really does keep it interesting.
We had one of those folks on an earlier podcast, a fellow named Simon Owen.
Okay.
Just for anybody who wants to go back to that podcast, really his journey was really interesting. Rob, over to you.
So let's talk about that role of the citizen developer a little bit more, Richard. We also had Shell on the podcast for a couple of episodes. Just a great Power Apps, Power Automate story out at Shell, and they have thousands of developers, right? So, ultimately, we have this idea that software is going to become part of everyone's everyday business, right? Knowing how to use the low-code platform in your organization will be as much of a requirement as knowing how to use Word and Excel. Is that, how are we doing on that journey, Richard? How are we doing in terms of software becoming part of everybody's life? Because we just think this is a massive opportunity to address that long tail of automation that's so messy in organizations.
Yeah, it is. And I'd say my my opinion here has changed a little bit over the last 3 or 4 years. We absolutely went out with a everybody can do this. Now that may be true, like everybody probably can do, but maybe everybody shouldn't do it. And I think what we found is there are a core set of people that this just comes naturally to, and they may not be in IT. But they can pick up the products. They are the people that use our, productivity suite in really creative ways, and they get into VBA and adding and all sorts of, they have they're tech curious, right? They want to figure out how this stuff works, and those people can do amazing things because they are closest to the business, they're closest to the data, they're closest to the problem. And if you can give them the tool to go write automation or an app or an agent, they will do amazing things. Now, there's a bunch of people around them that maybe aren't as tech curious or as have the same aptitude for them, and it may not be the right thing for them, and that's fine. That's fine. But there are a ton of those kind of power users, to coin a very old phrase, right? And they're prime candidates for picking up low code and doing very interesting stuff with it. And then there's IT. Now, everyone in IT is generally way more tech curious and IT literate than not. And we have to make sure, and this is something that we've talked about tons over the years, you have to make sure IT is on board and you give IT the controls and the capabilities to manage this stuff. Otherwise, it just doesn't go very far. And we've kind of invested in both sides. Kind of back to the first question a little bit, where we've made sure that we've made it easy for users that want to do this stuff to be able to do it in terms of the accessibility of the product. We made sure IT have got the tools and the capabilities and the governance models and security and that kind of stuff around it, so that they feel comfortable and it's done in a secure and managed way. You've got to have both of those sides of the coin.
It's interesting. I always I will often fall back on sort of what I see around me in my own four walls, within my own family. They're not all, unfortunately, not all within my four walls anymore. But my son took a new marketing job with a medium sized company, and he just saw a huge opportunity to automate the actions between sales and marketing, and it was not traditionally would not have been a trivial thing to do, right? What he was attempting to do. So son goes to daughter, who's a little better at this stuff. Son's an Excel jockey, and she says, just automate it to empower automate. And in no time at all, he's built automation connecting to systems and removing a huge bottleneck within their organization. Excel jockey, huge value, really, really quick time to value.
Yeah.
John, back to you.
So Richard, in talking about the involving IT, but empowering tech curious business people, you've kind of highlighted one aspect of a strategy, a successful strategy, getting IT involved and support and gaining their support. As you've seen customers apply this, what are the other elements of successful strategy that you've seen? We think about things like training, for example, or certainly guardrails and governance to prevent people from perhaps doing things that are destructive, or that compromise security. Things like celebration of success. I mean, what are the kinds of things you've seen like that really are crucial to a successful strategy?
Yeah, so there's a bunch on the soft side. Things like setting up a center of excellence for making it easy for people who want to get started to be able to find like-minded people that can go and help them. Creating a community around low code, which honestly we've been super lucky with. We have an awesome low code community. We're on the Power Platform Conference every year. We get thousands of people there. There are thousands of people in our forums, all helping each other, like creating a kind of microcosm of that within an organization, so that you can talk about your specific things that you're doing is super important. So creating ways and tools and processes to help that community thrive around maybe things like we call them center of excellence, where we've got toolkits and tools and content to help customers deploy. Those things are super important. I would say change management is really important. Low code can look scary if you've not got your arms around it, and making sure that you've got ways to deploy it, understand it, manage it, track it, Even do things like, if you empower business units or organizations within your greater organization to go solve their own problems with low code, you've got ways for central IT to support those things. So there's a phone number to call if something goes wrong. If that app or that workflow becomes mission business critical, you can stick it into IT, and IT can turn it into much more of a managed step. So there's a bunch of that kind of change management work that is really important. Adoption is super important. It's a new tool for lots of people, making sure people have got the right tools to go, figure it out and adopt it. Things like you were talking about, like celebrating people that do great things. We have and I think most low code vendors have it to one degree or another, but we have a whole set of adoption and deployment toolkits and content to go help customers kind of deploy at scale, and they include a raft of capabilities.
Right. I want to give you a little bit of a shout out too. We've done some work on low code maturity model, and found that the low code maturity model materials that you guys have produced were really specific, really pragmatic, and anybody who's really getting into this deep, have a look at that material. It's very, very helpful. Over to you, Rob.
So, quick commercial break. Lowdown on Low Code is brought to you by Analysis.tech. If you'd like to learn more about Analysis.tech, if you'd like to engage with myself or John, Dave Marcus, Ryan Duguid, Rick Greenwald, Francis Carden, Andy Bartels, just a terrific group across a wide range of skills and experience. Hit us up on Analysis.tech. If you like the podcast, hit the like button, hit the share button. We love to help we'd love it if you could help get the word out. John, back over to you.
So let's shift gears, Richard, because the elephant in the room is AI, and Microsoft is certainly a big player in AI, and is betting big on generative AI generally, and Copilot Studio specifically. So how do you guys see AI and low code coming together? Technologically as a set of features, but also how do you think it's going to affect the usage? Particularly among business folks.
Yeah, so I purposely didn't talk about AI when I was asking the question before. So I think there's a few things to look at. There's AI that helps makers make things, and we've been investing in that for quite some time. Way back in the day when we had Formula Builder, and we've AI Builder, and a whole series of AI capabilities in the product for a while. That obviously over the past 2 years has just skyrocketed, as you'd expect. That opens up the platform to a whole new set of makers. So it's not just the tech curious anymore. It's there. If you've got access to the product, and you can talk and you can write, generally you can start to do things. Now you will get to a point where you probably want to take it a step further, and you're going to need to learn a few new concepts. But it really does reduce the barrier of entry for a whole heap of people. So there's the maker side of things, which we're doing a ton of work on, and then there's the end user side of things, and that could be anything from making it easy to fill forms. You just drag a PDF in, and it analyzes the PDF and sticks the right things in the right cells, all the way through to embedding agents directly within an app itself, or using AI within a workflow, right? So there's a across the spectrum. AI is showing up. I mean, it's no secret. You just need to open the product and you'll see what's going on. It's everywhere. It is the absolute focus for us at the minute to go make the platform more valuable, like quicker time to market, quicker time to return on investment, and a lot easier to use for makers.
Do you think AI will ease the transition between, say, low code and high code? Talked about, when you need to go to high code, you can do so, and there's not a cliff there. There's not a big chasm you need to leap over.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's going to come a time where like things like GitHub Copilot and what we do in the Power Platform portfolio will start to blend in a really meaningful way. And that's going to be an awesome opportunity for customers to take things to a whole new level. When you can bring the low code and pro code together in an AI centric way. Agents could be the thing that drive a lot of that advancement, by the way, in MCS, in Copilot Studio. But yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't want to predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months, because if I'd have tried to do that 6 months ago, I would have probably been wildly wrong, because it's moving faster than I've ever seen it in my career in this industry. But you could totally see that happening.
Yep. Thank you, Rob.
I think we really. I mean, it seems like it has to happen, and I think we're really excited to see where you go with that. Bringing together Copilot Studio and all the assets within Power Platform, and then throw in Dataverse, throw in a whole bunch of interesting assets you have. But one of the commonalities between low code and Copilot Studio is this idea that I really want to unleash innovation. I really want people to be able to get their arms around these tools, and of course that introduces potential risk, right? Risk that is worth managing, right? And one of the things I think we can always think of with Microsoft is we need a grown up in the room, and certainly around AI right now we need a grown up in the room. How are you thinking about governance of these technologies, so that we can get it into the hands of the people, start unleashing that power, but making sure that we're not introducing any risk that we don't want within an enterprise?
Yeah. So the one of the great things about MCS is that it was born from Power Virtual Agents, which is clearly got its roots in Power Platform. So inherited a bunch of the governance capabilities that were already present in our portfolio, and we've continued to push the boundaries there, for good reason. Agents are something that everybody looks at and goes, "That's an awesome idea, but holy heck, like, how do I control them?" We already have a very, very strong baseline because it's part of Power Platform. We've done a ton of work with the modern work folks as well, because Copilot Studio is used as the tech stack for Agent Builder in BizChat for M365 Copilot. Same stack. So we need to carry that governance story through from literally, Rob or John can go into BizChat, create an agent very, very quickly. That needs to be as managed as a agent that you build in Copilot Studio, so that IT's got a left to right view. We have invested in, I don't know if you've heard of like the Copilot control system. We've talked about it a little bit. That's a concept that we're pulling together that it will bring, hopefully, eventually, as kind of a single pane of glass view across all of the agents you've got within a tenant, so that you can manage them in a unified way. Today, there's a few. We've got the Microsoft Admin Center. You've got PPAC. There are a couple other places, Purview. It's going to take us a little while to figure it out, and we're doing our best to bring these together in a sensible way now, so you've not got admins hunting around for different buttons and different places and different reports. Hopefully, over time, that's going to come together in a much more seamless way, so that you do get that left to right view across wherever agents exist. You've got the ability to go manage them.
Excited to see where you go with this, John. Take us out ahead of the headlights.
So your big boss, Satya Nadella, made a lot of headlines recently talking about how SaaS is dead. I'm curious about a couple things. I mean, the way we interpreted his comments was that he meant that it was becoming more and more possible for customers to build exactly what they need and not have to run away from custom development, because it's getting easier, certainly with AI coming into the mix, getting even easier and more reliable. I'm curious if that's the way you interpreted it, Richard. And also, I mean, if our interpretation is anywhere close, that would seem to put Power Platform right in the center of Microsoft's future value. As Microsoft sort of maybe transitions away from packaged apps and pushes more towards all of its strengths, in custom development, including in low code development. So I'm sorry for the complicated question, but curious how you interpreted Satya's comments, and then I'd love to know if you believe that Power Platforms, like we think, front and center in the future then of the company.
Well, I mean, John, you know me, I love being at the center of everything. So I hope it is. Let me tell you what I think. I think what Satya is talking about there is basically kind of an inversion of value. If you look at systems of record, look at CRM, look at ERP, look at finance ops, all of those kind of things. Historically, the value has been in the database. It's where the business logic lives. It's where the data lives. And then you got a bunch of honestly kind of janky forms on top of that and stuff that people really don't enjoy using all that much. You find me a salesperson that loves interacting with their CRM system and filling in forms, and I'll buy your hat. There aren't many of them, right? So I think what he's talking about there is this agentifying and this agent concept is essentially going to end up inverting where the value sits. So it won't necessarily be value in the data. The data will end up somewhat becoming commoditized. The value will end up the IP will be in the agents that interact with that data.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take the CRM system example, you'll end up with a world where you have an agent, but if you're a salesperson, an agent by your side that's not only helping you keep your CRM, so you get off a phone call and it's transcribed the phone call, that customer, and it can stick it, the synopsis of it, the summary of it straight into the CRM. You don't have to do anything, right? It can give you a nudge if you've got something coming up in a couple of days with a customer that has got an issue it's been looking up in the service, system, and it knows, so it can start to prep you. It can tell you what they bought. Like, it can start to work on your behalf, and you end up interacting with the agent versus the system of record. And I think that's what he's saying, where it's going to literally like flip this on its head a little bit, where the value and the IP ends up being very much grounded in the agent layer versus necessarily where it's historically been in the database layer. Does that help put it in a bit of context?
Makes sense. So Power Platform becomes a major way of producing those agents, does it not?
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, just like back in the day, you would use Power Apps to customize the forms in Dynamics, in the Dynamics sales. Think of MCS, Koplowitz Studio, being the thing that you use to build your agents that interact with the data that you've got in your line of business systems, your systems of record. So yeah, so the second part of your question, absolutely, it becomes front and center. And the first part, I think it's more of that, I think, inversion of where the value sits, which is going to be a wake up call for the whole industry,
Well, and is it? Do you think it's true that we've already talked about how MCS specifically, but agent development generally, generative AI development generally, is a much lower barrier to entry for more and more business people. Do you think that ultimately it's inevitable we're going to have lots and lots of these agents, and the business people are going to have to be front and center in building them because they know what experiences they need, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I would say building and customizing.
Yes,
There's an
and
element
maintain it.
Yeah. So yes, there will definitely be a point that we get to where Richard's got a suite of agents. Actually, let me step back. Let me give you the way that we kind of frame this all up. And these are the words that Satya's used a bunch of times around this, like UI for AI concept. Think of that as M365 Copilot being the way that you could discover agents, manage agents, use agents. It almost kind of becomes your chief of staff for the agents that are working on your behalf. Now, they may have been built with Copilot Studio. They may be customized with Copilot Studio. They may be first party. They may be third party. There's going to be many different there already are different categories of agents. Yes. But Copilot, M365 Copilot is the thing that can kind of glue all that stuff together for you.
Yeah.
It can invoke them without you needing to say, hey, I need to go open a PO, go find the PO. It can understand the context and it can go do the work for you. It can submit a bunch of the information directly to PO opening agent for you because it knows you. It can personalize it. It can work with the PO agent to say, hey, I need Richard to approve these 3 things. And it can pop up and say, Richard, looks like you got 15 minutes free in your calendar in half an hour. Do you want to approve these 3? They look good. You just need to click the OK button. Click. So it can become that kind of center of gravity for the agents that you use, because you're going to end up with many of them, talking to each other as well. And that's where this kind of concept of this UI for AI really starts to shine, because it's the thing that kind of glues it all together.
Just one last bit, Richard, on the looking ahead. It seems like for that vision to really unfold, you're going to have to get into decisioning, right? You're going to have to get into agents making decisions based on available information, based on policies, et cetera. Is that
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'd say agents will exist on a spectrum of things that they can do. There's very simple agents on one side of the spectrum that are kind of prompt response, that basically just working off a grounded set data. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got highly autonomous agents that are using multiple models, calling other agents, using deep reasoning, using a bunch of advanced things. All though with the ability to say, if I'm stuck, put my hand up, and I need a human to help. So that they will exist on that spectrum. And yes, decisioning, deep reasoning, all of the things that you think about when you think about more advanced kind of LLMs and the way that they work, they will exist probably much more on that right hand side of the spectrum.
Right. Thank you, Rob.
So I want to hit the agent thing just a little bit more, Richard, because I think great insights into sort of how the user interaction models are going to change. Really, really interesting stuff. There's another dynamic here, which is, we often say that your processes don't respect your organizational boundaries. They don't respect your legacy systems, right? We have tended to, to automate across these deeply entrenched, really overly complicated legacy systems. We've got a little SAP, we've got some Dynamics out there, we've got some Oracle out there. The other thing that agents can do, potentially much more effectively than hardwiring things through models and orchestration and things like that, and heavy duty integration, is to move things and move processes and enable processes that move between systems. Is that something that Microsoft is also thinking about? Is that part of the the dynamic that says these applications are going to look so fundamentally different, including the processes?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we announced support for MCP a few weeks back. That I think is going to end up going into a core component of the story you just told there, Rob. The other thing we're seeing from customers is very few, if any, customers are going and finding a business process, monolithically replacing it with a agent. What's generally happened is you're looking at business process. The business process consists of a ton of different steps, and they're kind of grafting out a bit, the easy bits, really picking off the easy bits that you can do with agents to begin with, and then moving on to the harder parts, up to the point that maybe 60, 70, 80%, and then eventually 100% of that business process is replaced with automation and an agent. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, because there are very few meaningful business processes that you could just click and replace with an agent. There will be a series of agents doing some specialized jobs that are talking to each other that ultimately add up to hey, you've identified that end-to-end business process.
And it will happen over time. It will happen as these technologies become more robust. It will be happening as the governance gets stronger. It will be happening as there's less appetite to customize applications, because you don't have to do it as much. So it'll be an interesting sort of maturity that model that evolves over time.
It will.
Richard, this has been great. So great to have you on the show. So great to get the insights. Thank you for sharing a little bit of a glimpse into where Microsoft is going with Power Platform and MCS and some of the other assets. I just really appreciate you taking the time here.
It's always fun to talk to you, Per. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
All righty. So this has been our latest episode of Lowdown on Low Code. Tell your friends, and we'll see you next week. wow.